So I want everybody to remember you really don't need a lot to actually get by, particularly within Western countries. You really don't. Like, you can get by on very, very little. And if that's your base case scenario, if that is what you're basing everything on, man, everything is pretty amazing after that. Right? So I want to actually talk about that in terms of framing where you are and what you're about. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Maslach. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole Reciprocity Project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the paper for it to help you out as much as I possibly can. One of the challenging things that we face is where we frame, or how are we actually framing where we begin and what we're about. And one way to frame it is to look at where you are right now and sort of think about, oh man, if I, especially folks that are younger and they grew up with just middle class families, and when they start out they're like, man, I don't have anything, it feels awful where I am, and um, you know because my parents had all this kind of stuff. But I want to point out that, hey, it's a matter of reference and how you're thinking about it. It's how you're framing the actual decision that you have, or it's framing the your surroundings based on what you have. And if you simply just look at, hey, what is the least possible way that I can live? What is the least possible um, what do I really need? And if you look at what you really need, you don't need a lot. You can get by on a very, very little. Um, you can live in a not great neighborhood, and yes, it might not be safe, but you could still survive and get by. You don't need a car. You can ride a bicycle. I did that for many years. You can do anything. Like you don't need to really spend that much on eating, although excuse me, whoa. um but you can get by with it if you just eat a little bit. But I like to eat better now. um I lived for a couple of years of just eating rice and peas, and I was totally fine with that. Um, there's so much that you can live off of, or so little that you can live off of, and it's just a matter of framing where you are and looking at, hey, wait a minute, just even a few years ago, that was the norm to live like that, to live much more poorly. My parents, the way that they grew up, both of them were extremely poorly, and you would think like, oh my gosh, like how did they survive like that? That was the norm. That's how everybody survived, and that's how everybody got along. So I want you to sort of frame your decision and frame what you're doing um, as like, you don't need a lot. In fact, you can probably get by with a canvas tent, a little wood stove in the canvas tent, and you'd be totally fine with a bicycle and some rice and peas. You'd be totally fine, and you would get by. And I want everybody to sort of frame your decisions that way, and everything that you have is just pure luxury. And when you see that, you frame everything as, it's just, man, it's just wonderful as apple pie. Everything that you get is I appreciate it absolutely. There's lots of things that I look around, I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty cool that I'm able to do this, or that we do have these abilities at this moment to do these things, whether it is driving a car or whether it is living in a house. Um, all of that stuff is just golden. So I want you to take a step back, think about what is the least possible thing that can happen to you, or the least possible stuff that you can have, as well as frame as like, what is the worst possible day that you will ever have, um, when you have that, right? Like maybe everybody dies and you're the only one that's there, but you're still going to survive and you're going to get by. And if you start thinking like that, you'll start being like, wow, you know what? I'm doing okay. We are doing completely fine. And everything is golden from there. Now, the hard part is convincing other people in your life that that is okay. But that's where you just simply have to disregard and be yourself and stand up and say, hey, I'm totally fine. And if you want to be with me, well, then be with me. If you don't, well, then, that's up to you. And as you start thinking like that, you actually really change a lot of things in your life. And you got to remember that everybody who wants to be around you is a decision. Being around you is this decision, no matter where you are and what you're about. So just keep all of that in mind. You are doing okay, and you are doing just fine. You're surviving, you're getting by, you have the minimal that you need. That's all that matters. That's it. And everything else is golden and apple pie. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.